Mary stood alone on the front porch, her hands trembling as she held Thomas's last letter. The sun was setting behind the rooftops, but she felt no warmth. Her house, once filled with laughter and the smell of fresh bread, now looked like a stranger's place. A bright red notice was nailed to the door. Final eviction warning. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the sound of Thomas's voice. He always told her, "You are stronger than you think." But today she wasn't sure if she believed it. Neighbors walked by without looking at her. Some whispered, some shook their heads. They had already decided she was guilty of something she didn't do. Mary pressed the letter to her chest. She thought about the nights she stayed late at work, the years she sacrificed to be respected. Was it all for nothing? Was her whole life just one long fight she could never win? Have you ever felt like the world turned its back on you? Have you ever been judged by people who never knew your heart? If you understand this feeling, you are not alone. Stay with me. This is just the beginning of Mary's story. Mary stepped back from the porch. Her legs felt unsteady, like they could fold at any moment. She looked at the cracked walkway leading to the gate. Every stone reminded her of Thomas. He had built this path with his own hands. He said it would guide her home no matter how far she drifted. Now it felt like the path was ending. Inside, boxes waited in every corner. She had packed her memories in cardboard, hoping it would hurt less. But each photo, each folded sweater felt heavier than she expected. On the kitchen table lay the notice. It called her a trespasser in her own home, a place she paid for with decades of work, a place where she raised Clara and learned to trust herself. Mary touched her wedding ring. For a moment, she imagined Thomas was standing beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder, telling her she still mattered. Have you ever watched everything you loved slip away? Have you stood in a room full of memories and felt like a stranger? If this speaks to you, keep listening. Mary's story is far from over, and maybe in her fight you will find a part of your own. Mary walked into the living room. Her steps were slow. The floor creaked beneath her like it was sighing with her. She stopped in front of the old bookshelf. Thomas had built it when Clara was born. It still smelled faintly of cedar and warm varnish. She traced the edges with her fingertips. So many years, she thought. So much life packed into this small space. Books, photos, little keepsakes no one else would value. On the top shelf sat a picture of her and Thomas smiling in the garden. They looked so sure of themselves, like nothing could touch them. But life has a way of testing what you think you know. One day you wake up and everything you trusted is gone. Mary felt a tightness in her chest. Was it grief? Was it anger? Maybe both. She picked up the picture frame and held it close. Her hand shook, but she didn't set it down. Have you ever clung to a memory because it was all you had left? Have you wondered if the past was the only place you were truly safe? If you felt this way, you understand Mary more than you think. Stay here with her. Her story still has many pages waiting to be turned. Mary set the picture down with care. Her eyes burned. She didn't wipe the tears away. In the corner, a cardboard box sat open. Inside were Thomas's old notebooks. He had always written down his thoughts, even the small ones. She reached in and lifted one out. The cover was worn soft from his hands. When she opened it, his handwriting filled the page. If you are reading this, he had written, "It means I am gone." Mary pressed her palm flat over the words. A small sound escaped her throat. She read on. "I never wanted you to feel alone. You were the reason I believed in good things." Her vision blurred. She closed the notebook and held it to her chest. How strange, she thought. Love could feel so heavy when the person was no longer there. Yet it was the only thing that still felt real. Have you ever found a message from someone you lost? A note that made the pain sharper but also brought comfort? Mary stood still, breathing slow. In that moment, she knew this fight wasn't just about her name. It was about keeping her promise to Thomas. If you've ever promised someone you'd stay strong, you'll understand. Stay with Mary. This is only the start of her courage. Mary moved to the kitchen. The light there was softer. It fell across the table where she and Thomas once shared breakfast. She pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. Her hands rested on the worn wood. It still held faint marks from years of meals and quiet talks. Beside her, a stack of unpaid bills waited. She looked at them without blinking. They were proof of how quickly life could turn against you. On top of the pile lay the eviction notice. Bright red letters, cold words, a warning she had only days left. Mary swallowed hard. She felt the old ache in her chest. It came whenever she remembered how much she had trusted the people at work, how sure she had been that they respected her. But trust, she thought, was sometimes a trap, and respect could vanish overnight. Have you ever believed you were safe, only to discover you were wrong? Have you ever felt your heart break because someone you counted on walked away? If you have, then you and Mary share something deep, something unspoken. Stay here. Her fight is not over, and in her struggle you may find the courage to face your own. Mary stayed at the table for a long time. Her fingers traced the edges of each envelope. The paper felt cold, almost like it belonged to someone else. She thought about the first day she walked into that office, how proud she was, how certain she could prove herself. Years of hard work had made her believe she was respected, but respect, she learned, was fragile, easily taken by whispers and rumors. A clock on the wall ticked steady and slow. Each second felt louder in the silence. Thomas's voice echoed in her mind. When they doubt, you remember who you are. She closed her eyes and let the words sink in. Maybe she had forgotten who she was. Maybe grief had made her smaller, but she wasn't finished yet. She wasn't ready to let them decide her worth. Have you ever felt like giving up, but something inside you held on, a small voice that refused to be quiet? Mary opened her eyes. The bills were still there. The notice was still real. But so was her memory of the life she built. If you have ever faced a moment like this, you understand her. Stay close. Mary's story is not a story of defeat. It is a story of remembering strength you thought you lost. Mary stood up from the table. Her legs felt steadier now. She took a slow breath, letting it fill her chest. She walked to the small cabinet near the window. Inside was a box she hadn't opened since Thomas passed. Her hands hesitated. Then she lifted the lid. Old letters rested inside. Birthday cards, notes he left on the kitchen counter, little reminders that she mattered to him. She picked up a folded piece of paper. On it, Thomas had written, "For the days you feel alone." Her throat tightened. She read the words again, slowly. "You were never just enough. You were everything." Mary closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks, warm against her skin. Have you ever wished you could hear someone's voice one more time, just to feel less lost? She pressed the note to her heart. In that moment, she felt something she hadn't in weeks. A small spark. Not quite hope, but close. The world outside was still waiting to take everything. The bills, the house, the last pieces of her old life. But inside, she felt a quiet strength returning. If you know what it's like to hold on to love when everything else is gone, you're not alone. Stay with Mary. Her journey is still unfolding one step at a time. Mary set the note back in the box. Her fingers lingered on the edges. She didn't want to close the lid, but she knew she couldn't stand there forever. The day was moving on without her. Light shifted across the kitchen floor, soft and golden. It felt almost kind. She walked to the window and looked out at the yard. The grass had grown wild. Thomas used to mow it every Saturday morning. He said it made the house feel alive. Now weeds climbed up the fence. Flowers she once planted were choked by tall grass. It reminded her how fast things could slip away. Have you ever watched something you loved fall apart little by little? Have you stood still, unsure how to stop it? Mary rested her hand against the glass. She felt the warmth of the sun, just enough to soften the ache. A thought came to her. If she let the weeds win, it would be like saying Thomas's care meant nothing. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Not yet. She turned from the window, her shoulders a little straighter. There was still so much she couldn't control, but today she could begin with one small thing: stay close. This moment was only the first step back to herself. Mary left the kitchen and walked down the narrow hallway. Her footsteps were quiet. Each step felt like moving deeper into a memory. She paused by the door to Thomas's old study. For weeks, she hadn't been able to open it. Today felt different. She reached for the handle. The door creaked as it swung wide. Dust hung in the air, soft and silver. Books lined every shelf. Stacks of papers covered the desk. She stepped inside. The smell of old paper and cedar made her chest ache. Thomas spent hours in this room writing letters she never saw. Mary touched the back of his chair. Her hand stayed there steady. Part of her hoped she would feel something, a trace of him still here. On the desk, a small envelope lay by itself, her name written in his careful script. She swallowed hard. Have you ever found something you weren't ready to see, something that made you feel both closer and farther away? She picked up the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she turned it over. The weight of it felt heavier than she expected. If you have ever held on to the last words of someone you loved, you know this feeling? Stay with Mary. The truth waiting in that envelope would change everything. Mary held the envelope against her chest. Her breath came slow, almost shallow. She wasn't sure if she was ready to open it. She sat down in Thomas's chair. It felt too big without him there. The leather was cracked where his elbows used to rest. For a moment she closed her eyes. She could almost hear the way he cleared his throat before reading aloud. The memory was so clear it made her heart twist. Slowly she broke the seal. A folded sheet of paper slipped into her lap. Her name was written again at the top. In his voice she read the first line in her mind. "Mary, if you are here, it means you are standing in this room alone." She swallowed, fighting the wave rising in her throat. "I need you to know something you never believed." Her hand shook. She kept reading word by word. "You were the heart of everything I did. No matter what happens, you were never less than extraordinary. Have you ever needed someone to remind you who you are, even after they were gone?" Mary pressed the letter to her cheek. Warm tears slipped down her skin. Stay with her. These words would be the strength she carried into the days ahead. Mary folded the letter with care. Her hands felt calmer now, like holding his words had steadied her. She slipped the paper back into the envelope, set it gently on the desk. Then she looked around the room, her eyes tracing each shelf. This place had always been Thomas's sanctuary, a quiet corner where he felt safe. Now it felt like a part of him was still here waiting. Mary stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was turning pale gold. Another day was ending. Another night she would face alone. But something inside her felt different, a little stronger, a little more sure. Have you ever felt a moment when you knew you could not go back, when the past was behind you, no matter how much you missed it? She rested her hand on the glass, watched the last light fade over the yard, and she whispered so quietly she wasn't sure she'd spoken. "I'm still here." If you've ever needed to say that out loud to remind yourself you mattered, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was ready to take the next step, even if it scared her, even if the world was still waiting to see her fall. Mary left the study and closed the door behind her. The latch clicked soft but final. She stood in the hallway, her hand resting on the frame. For a moment, she didn't move. She let herself feel the weight of everything, loss, fear, a strange, steady determination. She turned toward the living room. The boxes waited, stacked like silent witnesses. She knew she couldn't leave them forever. Each one held pieces of her life she had tried to pack away. Mary took a slow breath, walked over to the nearest box. She lifted the top and looked inside. Old photos stared back at her. Clara as a baby, Thomas in his garden, her own face younger but already tired. She picked up a picture and held it close. Have you ever needed proof that you once belonged somewhere, that you mattered to someone? Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. The past wasn't just pain. It was also love. It was proof she had built something real. Mary set the photo down, careful not to bend the corners. If she was going to fight for her name, she would start here, with the truth of who she had been. Stay with her. This was only the beginning of what she had to uncover. Mary sat down beside the box. Her knees felt stiff, but she didn't mind. It felt good to rest for a moment. She reached in and lifted another photo. This one showed her standing beside Thomas, holding a small trophy. She remembered that day, the first award she ever won at work. They were so proud. Not because of the title, but because it proved she belonged. Her fingers brushed the glossy edge. Now people said she had stolen everything she earned, that she was nothing but a liar. She closed her eyes, let the old ache rise and settle. Then she opened them again. Have you ever felt your name slipping away, like the truth of who you were was being erased bit by bit? Mary set the photo on the table. She reached for a stack of papers in the bottom of the box. Receipts, certificates, letters of thanks. Proof she had worked hard for years. Proof she had never cheated anyone. She spread them out in front of her. One by one, she would use them to build her case. If you have ever fought to be believed, you know what this moment feels like. Stay close. Mary was gathering her strength, piece by piece. Mary took a deep breath. She let her gaze travel over the papers. Each one was a reminder she had lived with purpose. She picked up a letter written by a former co-worker. The words were kind. They spoke of her honesty, her steady heart. She read it twice, then folded it carefully. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She pictured the office where she spent so many years. the hum of the lights, the quiet tap of her keyboard. She had given so much there. Time, energy, pieces of herself she could never get back. Now all that history was shadowed by suspicion. It stung deeper than she expected. Have you ever felt your life's work reduced to a rumor, like every good thing you did had been washed away overnight? Mary pressed her palm to the stack of letters. No one could erase the truth if she refused to forget it. She opened her eyes. The living room looked the same, but she felt different, a little stronger, a little more sure of her own story. If you've ever needed to hold on to your past to protect your future, you understand her. Stay with Mary. She was ready to take the first small step toward clearing her name. Mary gathered the letters into a neat pile. Her hands were steady now. It felt good to touch something real. She placed the stack beside her. Then she reached back into the box. Her fingers brushed against something smooth and cool. She pulled out an old leather planner. The cover was worn soft from years of use. Thomas had given it to her on her first day at the company. Inside, she had written every important date, every milestone, every moment she thought she'd never forget. She flipped through the pages slow and careful. Birthdays, deadlines, little notes in the margins. One line caught her eye. A date circled in blue ink. The day she was promoted to senior accountant. Her heart clenched. She remembered how proud Thomas was, how he'd brought flowers to the office, how he'd told her she was finally seen. Have you ever looked back on a moment when you felt respected? When you believed your work mattered? Mary closed the planner and held it against her chest. Those days were real. No rumor could erase them. If you've ever had to remind yourself you earned your place, you understand her. Stay here with Mary. She was not ready to let go of her truth. Not now, not ever. Mary set the planner down beside the letters. Her eyes rested on the small stack. It didn't look like much, but to her it was proof she wasn't the woman they claimed. She leaned back against the couch. For a moment she let herself breathe. The quiet felt heavy, but it also felt honest. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Late afternoon light spilled across the floor. The day was slipping away, soft and slow. Her gaze drifted to the front door. Beyond it waited more questions, more judgment, and the weight of debts she couldn't yet pay. But here in this room, she could still decide who she was. She could still remember what she had given and what she was willing to fight for. Have you ever felt the world demanding you prove yourself again and again, even when you were tired, even when you had nothing left to prove? Mary touched the planner one last time. Then she pushed herself up from the couch. Her knees ached, but she didn't pause. If you've ever stood up because your story wasn't finished, you know this feeling. Stay close to her. Mary was ready to face whatever waited outside that door, step by step. Mary walked to the doorway. Her hand rested on the frame for a moment. She looked back at the room. The boxes, the letters, the memories stacked in quiet rows. Part of her wanted to stay there, safe in the past, surrounded by proof she had been more than the rumors. But another part knew she couldn't hide forever. The world outside would keep pressing in, and she had a choice: stand still or step forward. She let her hand drop to her side, her heart beat steady though her chest felt tight. Have you ever had to walk out the door knowing everything could change? Knowing people were waiting to watch you fail? Mary turned the knob, opened the door. Light poured in brighter than she expected. For a moment, she closed her eyes. Let it warm her face. Let it remind her she was still here. She took one step over the threshold, then another. If you've ever felt afraid to be seen but walked forward anyway, you understand her. Stay close. Mary's story was moving into the open air now, and even if her voice trembled, she was ready to speak her truth. Mary stepped onto the porch. The air felt cooler than she expected. A small breeze moved through her hair. She looked out at the yard, the overgrown grass, the cracked walkway Thomas once kept so neat. For a moment, she let herself remember all the Sundays they spent tending it together, pulling weeds, planting new flowers, laughing when the wind blew dirt in their faces. Those days felt far away, but not gone, never truly gone. She walked down the steps slow and careful. Her shoes brushed against dry leaves gathered in the corners. Each sound felt loud in the quiet afternoon. At the gate, she paused. Have you ever stood at the edge of something knowing you couldn't turn back? Knowing the next step would test everything you believed about yourself? Mary rested her hand on the old wooden latch. It felt rough under her palm, solid. She took a breath, long and steady. Then she pushed the gate open. The world beyond waited uncertain, but so was she. If you've ever chosen to face what scared you instead of hiding, you know this moment. Stay with her. Mary was ready to begin her search for answers. One quiet step at a time, Mary stepped through the gate. The latch clicked softly behind her. For a moment, she looked back at the house. It seemed smaller from here, more fragile, but still hers. She turned and faced the street. No cars passed, no voices called out, just the hush of late afternoon settling over the neighborhood. She started walking. Her steps were slow but sure. Each footfall felt like claiming a piece of herself she had almost forgotten. Up ahead, she saw the old oak tree by the corner. Thomas used to wait for her there when she worked late. He'd lean against the trunk, arms crossed, smiling when she appeared. Have you ever wished you could step back into a moment like that, just to feel safe again? Mary touched the tree's rough bark, closed her eyes. For a heartbeat, she imagined Thomas beside her, his voice gentle in her ear. Keep going. Her eyes opened. The street stretched out before her, quiet and waiting. If you've ever needed courage to take the next step, even when you felt alone, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was walking toward the place where the truth waited, and she would not turn away. Mary kept walking past the oak tree. Her hand brushed the rough bark one last time, then she let it go. The sidewalk stretched out, cracked in places. Little weeds pushed through the gaps. She noticed them small but stubborn. She thought about how easy it was to underestimate quiet things that kept growing no matter how often they were stepped on. Her steps slowed as she reached the corner. A brick building stood there, the old library, a place she hadn't entered in years. She paused by the steps. Memories rose up soft and sudden. Saturday mornings spent with Thomas searching the shelves, afternoons reading to Clara in the children's section. Have you ever passed a place that once felt like a second home? A place that still held echoes of who you used to be? Mary rested her hand on the railing. The metal felt cool against her skin. She closed her eyes for a moment. The library had always been a place of answers, a place of quiet truths waiting to be found. If you have ever returned somewhere to remember yourself, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was about to step inside, and in those silent aisles, she hoped to find more than memories. She hoped to find a way forward. Mary climbed the library steps, one careful step at a time. Her hand never left the railing. It felt steady, a small comfort in a day that held so many questions. She reached the top and paused. The door was heavy oak, polished smooth by years of hands. She pressed her palm flat against it. Cool, solid. She took a slow breath. Then she pulled the door open. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and polished wood. Soft light filtered through tall windows. It felt like stepping into another world. Her footsteps were quiet on the tiled floor. Each shelf rose high above her, filled with stories waiting to be remembered. She walked past the front desk. The librarian looked up, offered a gentle nod. Mary nodded back but didn't speak. She moved to a corner where few people ever sat, a place she used to hide when life felt too loud. Have you ever needed a place where you could hear your own thoughts? A place where no one asked you to pretend you were fine? Mary rested her hand on the edge of a table. The surface felt familiar, like it was waiting for her return. Stay close. Mary had come here to find answers, but she also came to remember her own quiet strength. Mary pulled out the wooden chair. It creaked as she sat down. The sound felt comforting, somehow familiar. She placed her hands flat on the table. For a moment, she didn't move. She let herself feel the quiet all around her. Books lined the walls, row after row. Each title was a reminder that knowledge still mattered. That truth was never really buried, just waiting to be found. She reached into her bag and took out the small folder. Inside were copies of her work records, the papers no one had bothered to read before accusing her. Her fingers brushed the edges, thin sheets that held years of her life. Proof she had earned everything they tried to take. Have you ever had to gather evidence of your own worth just to be believed? Mary opened the folder. Page by page, she studied each line. Dates, signatures, numbers that told the story no one wanted to hear. Her chest felt tight, but she kept going. Every fact she traced was another reason not to give up. If you've ever had to fight for your own name, you know her struggle. Stay close. Mary was piecing together the truth. Slowly, carefully. She was not done yet. Mary set the first stack of papers aside. Her hands felt warmer now, steadier. Each document she reviewed made her doubt shrink a little. She pulled another sheet closer. It was an old expense report. Her signature clear in the corner. Nothing hidden, nothing to be ashamed of. Her eyes traced every line. Each column told the truth. The numbers matched perfectly. She thought of Kevin, how easily he had spread his accusations, how quickly people believed them. Have you ever seen a lie grow until it swallowed everything, even the good you worked so hard to build? Mary closed her eyes for a moment. She let the anger rise hot and sharp, then she let it settle. She would need that fire, but she wouldn't let it burn her away. She opened her eyes and took another breath, slow, grounded. She placed the report on top of the growing pile. Each page felt like a small victory, a reason to keep going. If you've ever had to prove you were honest when no one wanted to listen, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was not only gathering facts, she was reclaiming her voice, one page at a time. Mary reached for the next folder in her bag. Her fingers brushed the worn edge. She paused, let herself feel the small weight of it. Inside were letters from clients she had helped, notes thanking her for her patience, for her honesty, for caring when no one else did. She unfolded the first letter. The handwriting was careful. Each line spoke of trust she had earned, trust no accusation could erase. Have you ever needed to see in someone else's words proof that you mattered? Proof that your work left something good behind? Mary read every sentence, slow, letting the words sink in. They felt like a balm on skin that had been raw for too long. When she finished, she folded the letter again. Her eyes felt damp, but she didn't wipe them dry. Sometimes tears were just another way to remember. She placed the letter on top of the stack, then another and another. Each note a small reminder. She was not who they said she was. If you have ever needed to hold your own story in your hands, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was gathering more than evidence. She was collecting every reason to stand tall again, no matter who tried to silence her. Mary set the last thank you letter down. Her hands rested on the table. She felt the quiet around her settle deeper. She looked at the small pile she had built. Receipts, letters, proof that her life had weight. She closed her eyes for a moment, let herself breathe, let herself feel the pride she hadn't dared to touch in weeks. Have you ever forgotten your own worth, only to find it again hidden in the details? Mary opened her eyes. She reached into her bag once more. Her fingers closed around something smooth, a sealed envelope she didn't remember packing. She drew it out and turned it over. Her name was written on the front. The handwriting was familiar, Thomas's careful script. Her heart stumbled in her chest. She held the envelope against her palm. It felt heavier than she expected. She didn't open it yet. Not here. Not with her hands still shaking. She set it beside the letters. Then she folded her hands in her lap. A quiet moment passed. If you've ever felt the past reaching out to steady you, you understand her. Stay close. Mary wasn't finished. There was still more truth waiting, and she was ready to face every word. Mary kept her eyes on the envelope. Her thumb traced the edge slow and careful. She wondered when Thomas had written it. Before he got sick, or in those last days when his voice had turned soft, she didn't know. Maybe she never would. She felt her breath catch in her throat. The library around her blurred for a moment. All the shelves, all the quiet, faded behind the ache in her chest. Have you ever held something so precious you were almost afraid to open it? Afraid of what it might bring all back? Mary let her hand rest on the table. She wasn't ready to break the seal, not yet. She needed to gather the rest of her strength first. She looked at the letters again, the neat stack she had built, evidence that her life had been more than gossip, more than suspicion. Slowly, she picked up the envelope, slipped it into her bag. She would read it when her heart felt steady enough to hear his voice again. If you have ever needed time to face the last words of someone you loved, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was not done searching. There were still questions waiting in the quiet, and she would not turn away. Mary stood up from the table. Her legs felt a little stiff, but stronger than before. She gathered the letters into a careful stack. Each page felt like a piece of armor. She placed them gently in her bag. Then she looked around the library. The tall shelves, the soft light, the hush that had always felt safe. Have you ever needed a place that let you remember who you were, somewhere no one demanded you pretend? Mary walked down the aisle slow and steady. Her hand brushed the spines of books as she passed. Stories lived here, stories that mattered, and so did hers. She reached the front desk. The librarian lifted her gaze, offered a small smile. Mary nodded, her throat too tight for words. She stepped out into the late afternoon. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Sunlight touched her face. Warm, gentle. She stood on the library steps, breathing slow. For a moment she closed her eyes, let herself feel the truth. No rumor could erase the work she had done. No lie could bury the life she had built. If you've ever had to remind yourself that your story still matters, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was ready to walk back into the world, with her head held a little higher. Mary stepped down from the library steps. Her shoes brushed against the rough concrete. Each step felt like claiming a small piece of herself back. She reached the sidewalk and paused. The street was still quiet. Long shadows stretched across the pavement. Everything looked the same, but she felt different. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. Inside it rested the letters, the records, the envelope she hadn't yet opened. Have you ever carried something that felt heavier than it looked? Something that held both pain and hope? Mary took a slow breath. She looked up at the sky. The clouds drifted soft and pale against the blue. Thomas used to say the sky was proof that nothing stayed the same forever, that even the hardest seasons would pass. Her heart ached, but she let the memory settle, gentle instead of sharp. She turned toward home, each step measured, careful but sure. If you have ever walked back to face what hurt you, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was not finished. There were still truths waiting in the quiet halls of her house, and she was ready to find them no matter how much it cost. Mary walked along the sidewalk. Her shadow stretched beside her long in the late light. The breeze moved gently across her face. She glanced at the houses she passed, windows glowing warm, people she once called neighbors sitting on their porches. Some looked away when they saw her. Some watched in silence. No one spoke. Have you ever felt the weight of other people's judgment pressing against your skin? Felt their doubt before they even opened their mouths? Mary kept her eyes ahead. She wouldn't let them see her flinch. Not today. She reached the corner where the oak tree stood. Its branches moved softly, leaves whispering against each other. It felt like the tree was reminding her to keep going. She touched the rough bark, let her hand rest there a moment. A quiet promise to herself that she wouldn't give up. She turned down her street. Her house waited at the end. Familiar, changed, still hers. If you have ever had to walk past people who doubted you, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was almost home, and in the small rooms she loved, she would keep fighting for her name, one truth at a time. Mary walked the last stretch of sidewalk, her steps slow but certain, her heart steady even as it ached. She reached her front gate. The paint was peeling along the top rail. Thomas had always meant to fix it. Somehow it made her smile. She unlatched the gate and stepped through. The grass brushed her ankles. She felt the quiet of her yard wrap around her like an old blanket. Have you ever come home after everything changed, stood in a place you loved, and wondered if it still loved you back? Mary walked up the path. She let her hand skim the tops of the weeds. They were stubborn. But so was she. She paused on the porch. The red eviction notice still clung to the door. Bright, loud, a reminder of how much she still had to fight. Her fingers traced the edges of the paper. She didn't look away. She needed to see it, to remember why she could not give in. If you have ever faced proof that someone wanted to erase you, you understand her. Stay close. Mary wasn't turning back. Inside that house were memories worth saving, and she was ready to step through the door and keep her promise to herself. Mary reached for the doorknob. Her hand rested there still for a moment. She felt her pulse in her palm, steady, unbroken. She turned the knob and pushed the door open. The hinges creaked low and familiar. The house greeted her with its quiet, its shadows, its memories waiting in every corner. She stepped inside. The air smelled of old wood and something softer. The trace of Thomas's cologne still lingered near the doorway. Have you ever walked into a room and felt time folding around you, like every version of yourself was standing there together? Mary closed the door behind her. The notice fluttered against the wood. She didn't tear it down, not yet. It would stay as a reminder. She slipped off her shoes and set her bag on the table. Her hand rested on the smooth surface. She thought of all the nights she and Thomas sat here, talking about small things, believing the big things would always hold. She took a slow breath. This house still belonged to her. No matter what papers said, if you have ever had to reclaim the place you loved, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was home again, and she was ready to defend every part of it. Mary stood in the hallway. The late light slipped through the curtains. It painted soft stripes across the floor. She listened to the house breathing. The quiet felt almost alive. A space, holding its own kind of memory. Her eyes drifted to the framed photos on the wall. She stepped closer. One picture showed Thomas smiling in the garden. Another caught Clara as a child reaching up to hug her. Mary traced the glass with her fingertip. The edges were cool, the images steady. Have you ever needed to touch a photograph just to feel close again? Just to remember that love didn't disappear when someone left? She let her hand drop. Her gaze settled on a small gap in the frames, a place where one photo was missing. She knew which one. The picture of her retirement ceremony. The one she had taken down after the accusations started. Mary turned and walked to the cabinet. She opened the drawer and found the frame wrapped in an old towel. Her throat tightened, but her hands stayed steady. If you have ever hidden something because it hurt too much to see you understand her, stay close. Mary was ready to bring that picture back into the light, to claim the part of her story no one could steal. Mary lifted the wrapped frame from the drawer. The towel felt rough against her palms. She held it for a moment, gathering her breath. Slowly, she unfolded the cloth. The glass caught the light, reflecting her face back at her. Older, changed, still here. She studied the picture inside, her own smile bright and certain. Thomas standing beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder. People clapping in the background. Have you ever looked at a moment you thought you'd lost forever and felt the ache of it come back sweet and sharp at the same time? Mary let her fingers touch the corner of the frame. That day had been real. No accusation could erase the pride in her eyes. She turned toward the hallway wall. The empty space waited quiet and patient, like it knew she would come back to it someday. Mary walked over. She lifted the frame into place. The hook caught steady and sure. She stepped back to look. The line of photos felt whole again, complete in a way she hadn't felt for weeks. If you have ever reclaimed a part of yourself you were told to bury, you understand her. Stay close. Mary had more to remember, and more to protect. Mary stood in front of the photos. Her eyes moved from frame to frame. Each one held a piece of her story. She let her hand rest against the wall. The paint felt smooth, cool under her palm, steady. She took a slow breath. The ache in her chest softened, just a little. Have you ever needed to see your life lined up in simple images? Proof that you existed, that you mattered more than the worst thing anyone said about you. Mary stepped back. The picture she had returned to the wall felt right in its place, like it had been waiting for her courage to come home. She turned away and walked into the kitchen. Her bag still rested on the table. Inside the envelope waited Thomas's final words she hadn't yet read. Her hand hovered over the flap. She wasn't sure her heart was ready, but she knew she couldn't keep running from it. She pulled the envelope out, held it in both hands. The paper felt fragile, important. If you have ever needed one more moment before opening something that could change everything, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was ready to hear the last things Thomas wanted to tell her, even if it made her heart break all over again. Mary sat down at the kitchen table. The chair creaked under her weight. She set the envelope in front of her. Her fingers traced the edges, slow, careful, almost afraid to begin. The house felt so quiet, like it was holding its breath with her. She let her hand rest flat on the paper, gathering her courage. Have you ever known a few words could change you forever and still needed to hear them no matter the cost? Mary closed her eyes. For a moment, she pictured Thomas's face. His steady smile, the way he always knew what to say when she doubted herself. She opened her eyes again. Her thumb slipped under the seal. The paper lifted with a soft sound. Inside was a single sheet, folded clean, waiting. Mary unfolded it. The handwriting was so familiar it made her chest ache. She began to read. My dearest Mary, if you are holding this, it means I am no longer there to tell you in person. Her breath caught. She read the line again, slower this time. If you have ever needed someone's last words to feel less alone, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was about to hear the truths Thomas left behind. Mary held the letter in both hands. Her eyes moved over the words. Each line felt like a thread pulling her back to him. I want you to remember something. You were never just my wife. You were my best friend, my safe place. Her throat tightened. She read the sentence again slower, letting it sink into the places that still hurt. I know the world can be cruel. It can twist the truth, make you doubt your heart. Mary felt a tear slip down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Some things deserve to be felt all the way through. Have you ever needed someone to remind you who you were when everything else tried to make you forget? She kept reading, but no matter what anyone says, you are honest. You are brave. You are loved. Please don't let them take that away. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. The words were the last gift he could give her, a map back to herself. Mary folded the letter slowly, held it against her chest, eyes closed. If you have ever needed a voice to steady you, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was finding her strength again. One word at a time, Mary stayed at the table. Her hands rested on the folded letter. It felt warm from her touch, almost alive. She let her breathing slow, in, out. The house settled around her, quiet and waiting. She opened her eyes, looked at the space where Thomas used to sit. Sometimes she swore she could feel him there, watching her with that steady gaze. Have you ever felt someone's presence long after they were gone, like love could linger in the air, even when the body could not? Mary reached for her cup of tea. The liquid had gone cold, but she lifted it anyway, took a small sip. It tasted of memory, of mornings shared in silence, of comfort so ordinary she once forgot to be grateful. She set the cup down. Her hand drifted back to the letter, fingers resting on Thomas's name, a reminder she was never truly alone. She took a slow breath, then another. Each one felt stronger than the last. If you have ever gathered courage from a memory, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was almost ready to rise, to carry the truth in her hands and walk back into the world unafraid. Mary stood up from the table. Her knees felt stiff, but she didn't mind. Strength had a way of returning when you least expected it. She held the letter close to her heart, the paper soft under her fingertips, a final gift from the man who had always believed in her. She walked to the hallway, each step slow, steady, certain in a way she hadn't felt in weeks. Have you ever known it was time to stop hiding, time to stand in the light no matter who was watching? Mary paused by the door. The red notice still clung there. A warning, a threat. But it no longer had the power to make her feel small. She peeled the notice from the wood, folded it once, then again, until it was just a scrap of paper in her hand. She turned and set it on the table behind her, where it could wait. It would not be the thing that decided her worth. Mary rested her palm against the door. She felt her heart beating strong under her ribs. If you have ever claimed your right to be seen and respected, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was ready to open the door and take the first step into what came next. Mary wrapped her fingers around the doorknob. The metal felt cool against her skin. A small shiver moved through her, but she didn't let go. She closed her eyes. Thomas's voice filled her thoughts. You are stronger than you believe. The words settled in her chest, warm, unmoving. She took a slow breath, held it, then let it go. Have you ever felt a moment stretch wide open, a moment where you knew your life was about to change? Mary turned the knob, the latch clicked free. Light spilled in through the crack, soft, golden. She pulled the door wider. The world outside waited, her street, her neighbors, the life she still intended to claim. She stepped onto the porch. Her heart steady now, her shoulders a little straighter. She looked back at the doorway, at the home she had almost lost. Then she faced forward again. If you have ever chosen to move forward without knowing exactly what you would find, you understand her. Stay close. Mary was not walking away. She was stepping into the fight for her name, for her truth, for the life she still deserved to live. Mary stepped off the porch. Her feet met the walkway she and Thomas had built together. Each stone felt familiar under her soles, a quiet promise she was not alone. She paused at the gate. Her hand rested on the worn wood. The morning sun warmed her skin, light spilling over everything she thought she had lost. Have you ever felt the moment you stopped being afraid, when fear turned into something clearer, something like purpose? Mary lifted her chin. She looked down the street. Neighbors were starting their day. Some glanced her way, some looked quickly aside. It didn't matter now. Their opinions couldn't erase the truth she carried, the truth folded in her bag, the letters, the records, Thomas's last words. She opened the gate and stepped onto the sidewalk. Each movement felt like reclaiming a piece of her life, one small step after another. If you have ever decided that no one else would define your worth, you understand her. Mary took another breath. Deep, certain, stay close. Her story doesn't end here. This is the first page of something new, something she will write with her own hands, and no one will take it away again.